Why do we think the Baltimore Ravens will make for great flex plays and deep sleepers this week? And who are PrizePicks picks of the week in Week 12? It's time to find out right now as we begin another edition and close another week of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer. And when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst at NFL.com.
Michelle, I hope you had a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope all of you did out there as well, our listeners and viewers. And hopefully also your fantasy football players came through, especially if you started Jordan Love or Dak Prescott. We had a nice finish from Brandon Ayuk late. Maybe if you played the Seahawks and Commanders, we were a bit disappointed. But overall, pretty good day for our fantasy football assets. Now, we're going to try to hit on the guys here for the weekend, and we want to make sure that we're making the right calls there as well, and we will get into that. We're Locked On Fantasy Football, your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in the league. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day as well. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Find your bright spot this season. BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. All right, Michelle, time to help everyone here looking for some flex plays, and we'll let you dive right into it. And you have a player that's dear to your heart.
Yeah, I know. I feel a little bit of a homer here picking a Steelers player, but it's Deontay Johnson against the Bengals. I like this matchup for him. No team is allowing more yards per reception to wide receivers than the Bengals this year. And you saw how frustrated Deontay Johnson was last week with the way they were utilizing him and the way the offense was running. They get rid of Matt Canada. Hopefully this new play caller actually utilizes the middle of the field, which Matt Canada just refused to do this season. And that's where Deontay Johnson really shines. He has great yards after the catch ability. So if they actually allow him to run some slants and allow him to catch the ball over the middle where he has the opportunity to get some yards after the catch, then I think he'll have a fantastic game. And he has had 8+ targets in 3 of the last 4 games. So you know he's going to get the targets, and I think in this matchup, he will put together a nice fantasy performance. And then my next guy, I'm really bringing him up to give you the confidence to plug him in the first game back from a long-term injury. He's been out for a while now, but Rams running back Kyren Williams going up against the Cardinals. He's coming off IR. It's been the first time playing since week 6, which actually was against the Cardinals, where he put up 21.8 fantasy points in that game. But before his injury from weeks 1 through 6, he was averaging over 18 fantasy points per game. Like, he was one of the most consistent running backs that you could plug in from week to week. I don't know if he has the full workload right away this week, but I think he's going to get plenty enough touches against this easy matchup, and he's going to put up a good game. And then my last guy, it's we like these Ravens wide receivers this week against the Chargers secondary that's giving up a ton of points to wide receivers this year. But Odell Beckham Jr. might be my favorite play amongst this group. He's finished as a top 20 wide receiver in 2 of the last 3 weeks. He's been utilized way more, had 7 targets last week, 116 receiving yards. But with no Mark Andrews, he should see his targets even go up even more. And the Chargers are just giving up a lot of yards, a lot of fantasy points to wide receivers. So I like Odell Beckham this week. If he can come down with a touchdown, I think it's a huge, huge week for him.
Yeah, and we know Odell, as we talked about before, he's a primetime player. He likes the spots under the lights in Los Angeles, all that. It's a good return for him, right? It's going to be emotional, so he'll do it. And speaking of Los Angeles, I love the Kyren Williams pick. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better matchup in his return and getting into there. Now, I do have a Ravens player here and in our deep sleeper shot play guys, but I'll start with a guy that this is a little bit of a cheat here, Michelle. Kareem Hunt against the Broncos. Everybody has really good games against the Broncos, but you might be looking at Jerome Ford and saying, okay, am I going to trust Hunt to get enough carries here with Dorian Thompson-Robinson? So you might have a little bit of pause. But the matchup is just so good, right? If Denver can make Ty Chandler and Alexander Madison look like world beaters on the ground, they're going to help this Browns rushing attack, which is very good against most teams here. So Kareem Hunt, I think, finds his way into the end zone. He might be one of the few things that works here along with Jerome Ford in this matchup against a very good Broncos defense otherwise against the pass. So like that. And then Keaton Mitchell, speaking of Ravens players that I really like this week, speed, quickness on the outside. That is his game. Joey Bosa's hurt. We know he's not available. He's a very good run stopper on the edge as well. The Chargers are starting to leak, right, against the run. They were okay early in the season, but their defense has never been designed well to stop the run, especially guys that can run very fast here. Gus Edwards going to be the power guy, but Keaton Mitchell, great change of pace. Love him. Perfect flex type, right? That's the guy you want to get there. And Drake London, this is a massive break for Drake London because Marshawn Lattimore is not playing. You'll probably see Paulson Adebo in coverage. He's coming back here, injury bye. He should be refreshed, ready to go. And he was getting a little bit of run with Desmond Ridder before the bye. So it all lines up here pretty well now that Ritter's back starting over Taylor Heineke. So I love Drake London this week. I think he's going to be involved. I mean, Kyle Pitts, take it or leave it here, but I think Drake London is a guy that I feel really good about if I'm going with any asset in the Falcons' best again.
Yeah, with Lattimore being out with an injury, that just changes up the entire secondary. I actually have a different Saints wide receiver we'll get into for the next on the opposite side of the ball then. Yeah, but I have someone else in that game that I really like that we'll get into next segment. But with Keaton Mitchell, like I just want to see more volume from him, right? To make it safe. And it just feels like Gus Edwards just cannot stop scoring touchdowns. All he does is score touchdowns. But I love the Kareem Hunt pick as well. Jerome Ford and Hunt are both great plays this week against Broncos.
All right, we'll get a little bit deeper. As Michelle said, she has a Saints receiver. She gave it a little way there. But here, I'll give away something that I have another Ravens receiver I like in this game as well against the Chargers. So we'll get into that. But I do have to tell you about FanDuel before then. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and you should know FanDuel Sportsbook by now because they're the number one sportsbook in America. That's right. Right now, if you're a new customer, this is a good time. I mean, we need some extra cash for the holidays. It's Black Friday. How you can cash in? Well, you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's only at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's $150 if your team wins with a winning moneyline bet. That's pretty cool. This is a good time to get in. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now before the season runs out here in the NFL for 2023. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that you can look at: spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. It's easy to get in on FanDuel. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, it is time to reveal our flexes because you've already mentioned that you have a certain Saints receiver. I think I know where you're going, but you got three receivers, and I think he stands out among your group here this week.
Yeah, so it was Rashid Shaheed in the same matchup. And if I had to choose between Rashid Shaheed and Drake London, I do think it's a close choice, right? It seems like Drake London should be the much safer choice, but with the Falcons offense and the way Arthur Smith utilizes his like Drake London is the better talent. Don't get me wrong. Like he should be utilized as a top tier wide receiver one. We just know Arthur Smith hates to use his good weapons, but with Rashid Shaheed, he's been seeing a lot more playing time. And also with Michael Thomas out, you would expect his snap count to only go up more. Last game that they played, you saw he had 9 targets, right? Now, Derek Carr is going to annoyingly play. I would really like Winston to be in, especially for Chris Olave, but we have seen Shaheed get these deep plays with Derek Carr. So maybe it's a good thing for Shaheed, at least, that Carr is playing. Hate it for Olave. But you would expect on the Falcons side of the ball, they're going to focus more on stopping Chris Olave. Olave's probably going to see a lot of AJ Terrell, which, like, who else are they going to utilize then in this passing game? You're going to dump it off to Alvin Kamara 100 times, sure. But I do think Rashid Shaheed has a great chance to get that deep pass or receiving touchdown this week. And then 2 other guys that I really like as well. Josh Downs, Colts wide receiver against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers allowing the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers, and their secondary just keeps getting more and more injured every single week. Like, they're hanging on by a thread right now. Yeah. I will say Josh Downs has been dealing with an injury. I'm hoping with the bye week he's more healthy because in weeks 9 and 10, he did not play very much at all. Hopefully that snap count goes back up. We saw he was really consistent for fantasy there for a while before, missing time with this injury. So if he comes back, love this matchup for him, and hopefully his playing time increases this week. And then my last guy, this is a riskier one, probably only considering it in DFS, right? Another rookie, Jonathan Mingo, Panthers rookie, isn't doing anything, right? He's getting targets,
Yeah, he's
7
getting involved.
targets in week 10, 6 targets in week 11. It's not turning into anything. But he's playing a ton of snaps. He's almost always on the field, right? And now he gets to play the Titans. And Titans are allowing the 6th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers this year. But it's gotten way worse since Kevin Byard has been traded. So the last 3 weeks, they allowed a 31-point game to Calvin Ridley, a 26-point game to Mike Evans, and a 22-point game to Deontay Johnson. Now, obviously, Adam Thielen is my favorite wide receiver to play in this matchup, but I do think Jonathan Mingo has sneaky high upside. He's probably dirt cheap in DFS, so I like taking the chance on him this week in DFS formats.
Yeah, I mean, Mingo should be more involved in theory. Like, he's a good concept. They just need to execute a little bit more. Maybe that comes against this Titans secondary that has a lot of issues. Josh Downs, as you said, the Buccaneers are just really bad on the back end of the stage. So I'll get into my 3 here, and one of them was a popular waiver wire ad just for chasing the numbers that he had last week, but I actually think he can follow that up with good numbers this week. It's Khalil Shakir, the second-year wide receiver out of Boise State for the Bills. Now, when you look at this matchup against the Eagles, there should be high volume. The Eagles should be ahead in this game, you think, or at least even going back and forth with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts going after it back and forth here. So, yeah, there might be mirror images of each other, the way they produce passing and running this week. So when you look at Shakir, he got to match up probably against Sidney Brown inside. He's a rookie out of Illinois, so he's a guy that has been roasted here. The slot has been really bad. You got the veterans on the outside. One could contain what Gabe Davis does, so you feel good about Darius Slater, James Bradbury, maybe handling that matchup. But on the inside, you'll have Khalil Shakir, and the inside has been working, right? That's what we had from Joe Brady last game with Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir. So I like that this week. Now, Tyjae Spears has done absolutely nothing for multiple weeks, but he's just been a product of the Titans' offense doing nothing. Finally, in this matchup, the Panthers, they finally get a good matchup at home to do something here. It's their first good game in a long time with this quarterback, Will Levis, that you can think, okay, maybe it's the Atlanta game, but maybe it's a little bit different that they can get Derrick Henry involved. The Panthers stink against the run. So if they play with the lead a little bit here and Spears gets a little bit of a shot later in the game, then that's good. And maybe finally we'll see Tyjae Spears do something. They got to get this guy more involved, especially if Derrick Henry's struggling a little bit. I think Henry has a big game. I think Spears can trickle out of that and give you some flex variety here, hopefully with a touchdown against the Panthers. And then finally, I wrote down Shoddy Bates, and I confused Michelle by this, but this is what I like to call Rashad Bateman. I like the name if he's bad or he's good. I think Shoddy Bates is a cool name if you're good. If you're bad, you're just shoddy and you're bad. So I look at Rashad Bateman. I think we're looking maybe at this the wrong way with Isaiah Likely. I think Rashad Bateman is going to get some more run. He did finally get in the end zone. He's actually been more involved of late of Odell Beckham Jr. Nelson Aguilar's there, but come on, he needs like a fluke play to score on from the slot. So I really like Rashad Bateman being more involved. Let's keep in mind, this guy was a first-round pick. He's been battling a lot of injuries. He's finally healthy right now. He's talented. I mean, if there's any time to start using him now, it's in this matchup against the Chargers. And it's a really good matchup for him on the outside against Michael Davis, who's not been very good in coverage. So I love Bateman. I love Zay Flowers. I love Odell Beckham Jr. And if you want to really, if you're crazy and you're feeling lucky, DFS, go with Nelson Aguilar this week. That's how bad the Chargers secondary and how good these matchups are for the Ravens wide receivers.
Yeah, I think if I'm going with it in DFS, I think I'd rather go with Nelson Aguilar than Rashad Bateman, just because like we know how bad the Chargers are against slot wide receivers and what they're giving up there. So I do think there's a solid chance he could have a big play and a touchdown. With Rashad Bateman, yeah, he is talented, but like how healthy? He's already got injured in practice this week, right? And I feel like how many games now have we seen him play like 2 drives and then get hurt? Like this dude cannot stay healthy. That would be my biggest fear with playing him, right? Does he make it through the game? And then Khalil Shakir, I have Gabe Davis playing in way too many leagues this week, so I need him to be bad. I need you to be wrong about this, and we will get into Gabe Davis and our PrizePicks of the week in our final segment here. But first, I want to talk to you about another one of our sponsors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you ever find that just as you're trying to fall asleep, your brain suddenly won't stop talking? Do your thoughts start racing right before bed or at other inopportune moments? It turns out one great way to make those racing thoughts go away is to talk them through. Therapy gives you a place to do that so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. I'll say I do therapy over online, and it's way better than you would imagine. You wouldn't think you'd be able to have that connection with your therapist and actually be able to get the help you need, but it works. And it's so important to take care of your mental health. It's just as important as your physical health. But get a break from your thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedon and get on your way to being your best self. All right, Vinny, let's hop into our prize picks of the week. We'll each give our 3 favorite to end the show. If you don't know what PrizePicks is, it's a daily fantasy app. All you have to do is just download the PrizePicks app, use the code Locked On, and have some fun this week. Just putting in some money on players and rooting for them in the games. It just makes the whole sports entertainment situation just so much more fun. But Vinny, give me your 3 favorite picks of the week.
Yeah, Michelle, I went with all running backs this week, and I was looking at the numbers and things that I could exploit here. And if I see a number below 70 for someone in a great matchup, I usually go for it. Now, typically, I try to find those crazy quarterback rushing ones, but this is straight up. I'm playing it straight this week. Maybe it's Thanksgiving, and I'm just want to make it simple on myself and simple for everybody else. But I'm thankful and thinking that Travis Etienne will come through this week for all of his fantasy managers. You can run on the Texans for sure, and Travis Etienne has to be involved, and he's going to be a little bit of a squeaky wheel. They gave Calvin Ridley the grease last week, so this week it goes to Etienne, especially when they involve Dearness Johnson and Tank Bigsby a little bit more than he probably wanted last week. So he's going to ask for the ball. 63.5 is the rushing number there with the projection on PrizePicks. I'm going more than that for Travis Etienne. I think he's going to be involved. Look, some of this could come in the receiving game and all that, but I think straight up running Etienne reels off a long one here to help push past this number. Now, next guy is Ramondre Stevenson. He's only at 58.5. Now, the Giants are just terrible against the run at this point. I mean, they're giving up easy points to everyone. I mean, the Commanders, even how terrible they were against the Giants, they were able to still put up some numbers there. So, look, I think it's just a product of this matchup really being bad. They're going to lean more on the run here. The Patriots going down the stretch, their offensive line, their strength, everything goes to the running game. Stevenson has looked really good, and he's going to be well rested out of a bye. They're going to not be afraid of his carries, right? Ezekiel will get worked in. I could easily see these guys running 35 plus times combined this week. So if Stevenson gets 15 or 20, which I think 15 to 20 is the range, 58.5 is a number that he should easily hit more on this week. So 2 running backs there that are leads, and worry a little bit about receiving, cutting into that, but I do like those numbers. Now, one guy that I do not worry about receiving being part of his resume in a particular matchup is Derrick Henry. Now, I mentioned Tyjae Spears being my kind of deep sleeper dart throw here, playing off Derrick Henry. I think the Titans are going to say, look, we've lost all these games. We just got to go back to our bread and butter. We got to open up the play action for Will Levis. We got to protect him. Our offensive line is falling apart. 69.5 is the number for Derrick Henry. I think he's going to hit this. Look, we know what Derrick Henry's done, right? It's boom or bust. He usually has a big game, goes over 100 yards, scores a touchdown, or he disappears, and he gets like 12 carries for 36 yards. And it's disappointing to see that. This week, however, I mean, everything says this matchup should be the Titans running heavily on the Panthers because you can't throw on them as easily as you think. Got to run, got to take pressure over quarterback. So I love Derrick Henry this week. I think this is a guy that I want to play not just in PrizePicks, but in all kind of DFS formats. I think he has a big game here this week.
Yeah, I have some more Henry notes to just add on top of here. So in the 7 games that the Titans have either won or lost by 8 or fewer points, right? So the game just wasn't a blowout. Henry has averaged over 100 scrimmage yards per game and 17 fantasy points per game. In the other 3 games where the Titans were blown out by 14 plus points, he averaged just 28 yards and 3.5 fantasy points per game. But like the Panthers, lost 9 of the 10 games so far. In the one game they did win, they won by just 2 points. So even if the Panthers do somehow pull out a win here, you know it's going to be a close game. Love that Derrick Henry pick by you. One of my favorite plays this week as well. My 3 guys, David and Njoku, the tight end for the Browns, more than 38.5 receiving yards against the Broncos. He's had 50 plus receiving yards in 4 of the last 5 games, including each of the last 2. Had 15 targets last week with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and the Broncos are allowing by far the most receiving yards per game to tight ends this season. So I think he easily gets over 39 receiving yards in this game. And then I was talking about Gabe Davis. I am trusting him this week in my fantasy lineups. And I'm going to trust him here with getting more than 36.5 receiving yards against this Eagles secondary that is just allowing a ton of huge plays, right? And they're allowing the 4th most receiving yards per game to wide receivers this season. But I know that Gabe Davis has had a couple games here where he's put up a big 0. It's either 0 or he hits us over, right? So, I mean, just 2 weeks ago, he was at 56. And then it was 0. And then it was 87. Right. So he does this. And I just like this matchup too much. This takes one play for him to have a 40-yard reception, and he could do it, and just needs 37 yards in this game. So I like the more for him in this matchup. And then lastly, my boy, Jaylen Warren,
love it.
Steelers running back, more than 48.5 rushing yards. And that's shocking to me how low it is, because he's had over 100 rushing yards in each of the last 2 weeks, over 85 rushing yards in each of the last 3 weeks. And since week 9, he leads the NFL with 13 carries of getting 10 plus yards on those carries. And then on the other hand, the Bengals have allowed the 4th most carries of 10 plus yards this season. They're allowing so many yards per carry to running backs this year. So I love the matchup, and he's getting the touches and he's getting the production. So I'm shocked that all he needs is 49 rushing yards to hit the more on this line.
Yeah, Jaylen Warren, I mean, yeah, he's been outstanding. I mean, he's technically the starter. I mean, typically you can run well on the Bengals inside, but it doesn't matter. Devin Singletary also showed juice against them a couple weeks ago, and we also saw what the Ravens were able to do, even with Gus Edwards getting some chunk runs. So at this point, start your backs against the Bengals. I mean, that's definitely a weakness. It used to not be, right? They were pretty solid all through last year, but I think they're just a little bit softer inside, and that helps. And outside, Jaylen Warren is excellent at doing that. So I really like Jaylen Warren this week. And I also like David Njoku. These are actually 2 of the guys that I had on my list potentially for PrizePicks. So you can get the full endorsement on them here, because Njoku is just maybe clearly, I would say that Dorian Thompson-Robinson favors him, and he's the only guy he can get the ball to regularly. I mean, I would like him to be a little bit more efficient and catch a little bit more than half of his targets if he's going to get 14 or 15 in a game. But but that doesn't require all that much. He had 38.5 receiving yards. So I love that. Now, Gabe Davis, Michelle, I'm starting to think Gabe Davis might be your version of Kyle Pitts a little bit. Like, we want to cling to it so much. I mean, I like the idea of Gabe Davis. Again, I think the Bills do too. But if he's not getting the ball, it's hard to put up those numbers, right? So they need to correct this. I'm sure they're working on it in practice. So eventually I think this is going to blow up, and Gabe Davis is going to come back, and we're going to see what he can do. And maybe there's a chance here, right? It's a little bit slower. Corners on the outside, Slay and Bradbury are older guys. So maybe this is the opportunity here. But yeah, I'd like to see that. I mean, I think ever since Dalton Kincaid came on the scene, right? I mean, it's kind of been, I like Dalton Kincaid after Stephon Diggs in Josh Allen's mind. So now the Shakir usage is there, but there's no one else. Get the ball to Gabe Davis. Come on. I mean, this guy is probably not going to be re-signed next year. I'll tell you that. I mean, he's a free agent, but he needs a showcase. He can do some things. I bet if he goes to another team next year, I could see him do really well, right? I mean, he just needs to kind of free himself and get a shot to be a number 1. So again, Gabe Davis, we'll see, Michelle. Will you give him up, though, if he doesn't come through this week? I know you need him, but if he doesn't come through, is that it for you on Gabe Davis?
Yeah, I feel like I've been pretty good at figuring out what matchups to play him in and whatnot. Like last week, it was against the Jets. If you played
Yeah.
him, you knew you were going to get hurt. I mean, that's your own fault, right? The
Yeah.
Jets have the best secondary, especially against wide receivers, and he did nothing. And neither did Stephon Diggs, though. So
Yeah.
I do think in plus matchups, I prefer them at home, and this game's not at home, but it's just too good. I think they're going to put up too many points in this game, and Gabe Davis will come down with it. At least a touchdown, I think. We'll see what the yardage looks like.
Yeah, I'm hoping because look, I had to sit him and it was nice. It was nice early in the season, but I've sat him like multiple weeks now,
Yeah.
and I have depth. I've had depth. I mean, I have guys like Jaden Reed that I can
Yeah, I
put
don't
in.
have to play Gabe Davis this week. I'm
Yeah,
choosing to. I sat him in all my leagues last week, but I'm choosing to
so
play him this week
there
over
you go,
Subtext.
Michelle. Look, she has a good vibe on Gabe Davis. Now, if you want to be with her joy and misery at the same time, then just follow whatever she does, and you'll be good to go here. But really, hope that you all had a happy Thanksgiving here, and hopefully, you'll hit on all the players that you need to come through. It's a full slate of games, so we still have 13 more games, even though we got 3 games down. Don't forget about setting your lineups a little bit later today with Black Friday and all that with the Dolphins Jets. Probably not a lot of assets there that you need to make decisions on, but still, that's a game. So don't forget about that. Set your lineups for Sunday and Monday. Good luck with all that. And good luck with anything you do with DFS as well. For Locked On Fantasy Football for this Thanksgiving week, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.